Buenos días a todos, mi nombre es Mariano O'kon, yo soy director de ventas para Latinoamérica en Cisco, para todas las arquitecturas, y en estos 20 minutos vamos a hablar de trabajo híbrido. Y para eso trajimos a mi jefa, Ray Roberts, por eso voy a cambiar al inglés, porque ella no habla español, y nos va a contar un poco la visión que tenemos en Cisco del trabajo híbrido. Welcome to Cancun, Ray.
Oh, thank you, Mariano. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So, in the next 20 minutes, what we want to talk about is hybrid work. Everybody's talking about hybrid work. Why are we even talking about it? What's so fancy about it?
You know, it's interesting. We use the phrase hybrid work now, but if you think about what's changed in the last 3 years, this concept of working from in your home, working from in your car, working from in a shared office, working from a partner office, it's just work. But the needs have changed, the complexity has changed, and so it's making us think about what we need to change from an IT perspective, from our people management. Really, everything's changed, but it is just work today.
Yeah, it is work, but it's very different, right? I mean, as you said, not everybody was used to working from their house, from their partner's office. Everybody were used to work from the office. From an IT perspective, what technologies do you think are most relevant for hybrid work?
You know, when we think about hybrid work, often the first thing we think about is collaboration and the tools that we use in order to be able to communicate, right? Our video tools, the conferencing tools, and those are absolutely critical. But when I think the first thing I think about hybrid work is how do we secure things? We've never thought about having to take care of the network at home before, or the experience of working in a partner's office from your mobile device. That's changed how companies have to think about security.
Yeah, we have millions of people working wherever, literally wherever, with applications running wherever, so security needs to be rethought. The architecture needs to be rethought. What kind of solutions do we have for that?
When we think about things like everything from how we take care of multi-factor authentication, how you ensure that the people, when they're logging into your network, they're not just accessing everything. Zero trust, segmentation. Really, it's a broad spectrum of technologies, and Cisco is one of the only companies that has a portfolio as extensive to be able to address it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and especially everybody looking at me, in Latin America, we are a little bit behind. We need to be doing more gap analysis, where we are right now and where we need to be. As you just said, we have people that we don't have zero trust anywhere. Many people believe multi-factor authentication and zero trust are the same thing. They are not. Everybody is impacted by hybrid work, but also generationally, we are changing who's going to be the workforce, right? So what's the impact that these different generations, Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, have on this?
It's so interesting to think of myself as the more seasoned and senior employee now is a little different. But one of the statistics I found really interesting, and this is the same no matter what country you live in the world, is that by 2025, like 80% of the workforce will be Gen Z or millennial. And that changes things, right? This is a group of people that have grown up digital first, and experience matters to them in a way that maybe my and your generation was a little bit more tolerant if things weren't exactly smooth. They expect a high degree of experience from beginning to end.
Yeah, they work in different ways. For them, a phone is part of their work environment. They're used to that. Their experience expectations, as you said, are extremely different. So how do you see companies from a human resources point of view going into are the managers ready for this today?
Yeah. So are the managers ready? I think the managers are having to come up to speed, and I think corporate policy is dictating how really the retention ability of your top talent for the future is going to be how your company thinks about addressing hybrid work overall, right? I think about even my own children, right? They're in their 20s, and some of their first internships and their first jobs were completely remote. You know, they were hired in a cohort that had never been in an office before. And as they're now looking those same companies to bring them back to office, they don't necessarily all want to go. And so those companies are having to think about what is the office experience? How do we enable them to be able to work from wherever they choose to work? And then how do you blend that? And this is where the topic of hybrid work really comes to light.
Yeah, and you mentioned the office, right?
Yeah.
How do you get these people to want to go to the office? Not as a mandate, right? That they think about, oh, yeah, I want to go to the office. What needs to be done from a office perspective, not so much from their house, for them to want to go to the office?
Yeah, a couple of things. Some of the key themes that we hear when employers are surveying, and I would assume the exact same as in Latin America, but I'd love to learn a little bit more. But when they're surveying, the employees are saying, one, I want to go when there's people there. So many CIOs and CEOs are saying, I have this investment in real estate and maybe 10% of my workforce is coming in, it's underutilized. The employees are saying the same thing, is I want to know when I arrive that there's going to be energy, there's going to be collaboration that's happening, which means maybe we have to rethink the way our spaces are designed. More collaboration space, less cubicles, more places to meet. The other thing to think about is what happens in those meetings. We found that 98% of meetings will have at least one remote participant, one person that needs to connect virtually, at least one, maybe more. But less than 10%, what I think is 6% of all classrooms and offices actually have video capability. So that means when you arrive to the office, you're scrambling, looking for a space that's going to accommodate your meeting. That's a very frustrating experience that may make employees go, I'm just going to stay home and do the meeting because I'm more productive. So what we need to do as employers is think about our entire the workforce planning, the IT, the facilities, the real estate, the security as they move from home to work to back to home again, to maybe an Uber in between. It's not one answer. It's not one problem. We have to think about it holistically.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of things that are very important from the office perspective. You mentioned first, no more cubes, because people learned during the pandemic that whatever they need to do, they have to do it alone, answer emails, create a PowerPoint deck, whatever. They can do it wherever they want. They will go to the office to collaborate. And that's the next thing you said. Only 6% of classrooms and meeting rooms are video enabled, so they can have hybrid meetings. That for the companies, for our customers, is very relevant. But I love what you said before. This is all to attract talent. You're not doing this just for doing it. It's because if we don't create an office that is a magnet, then your people will work elsewhere. And this is directly related to the Gen Z conversation, millennial conversation. And we're seeing that in Latin America. It's not going as fast as I believe it's going in the US, but in Latin America, we are seeing that customers asking for that. So the last thing is, you mentioned about security, you mentioned about collaboration. What about networking? What role plays in all this?
It's interesting. I get really excited when I start thinking about the networking of the future, right? And as we think about that, there's the spectrum of, hey, I have some space and I need to make it more attractive for my employees. I need to make them want to come. I need to make them more productive once they're there. We can also think not too far into the future and start thinking about, I actually need to build my space from the beginning. And if I'm going to do that, how do I do that in a way that reduces my power consumption? You know, I know from living part-time in Mexico that the cost for electricity is very high. I cannot imagine, as you're thinking about this from an enterprise perspective, you know, when we have gone through and done some remodeling of our building using switching and PoE lighting and shade control, we can reduce our energy consumption by over 60%. That's massive. Not just from your, you know, expenditures on a regular basis, but also from sustainability goals, right? There's some really interesting things happening on the opposite end of the spectrum, from work from anywhere to how do I go ahead and rebuild and rethink that entire building from the design phase.
Yeah, so we're talking about buildings that are smart enough to really power what they need to power. And what tools do we have for the facilities guys, for the IT guys, to understand what the heck is going on in the offices?
I get really excited about Cisco Spaces because it answers a couple of things. So number one, your network is all sensor technology. Sensors are everywhere. And we think about when we first started this conversation, we're talking about when people decide they want to go into the office and they know, are there people there? Where are the people located? What about the air quality? All of those things can be managed with Cisco Spaces technology so that a facilities person can look at air quality within the building. They can look at density. They can actually be able to measure that and be able to do some management around how they build out their space and how they manage it. The technology is pretty amazing.
Yeah, the next couple of years are going to be very interesting where things are going. So just to finish, if I understand it correctly, we talked about working from home, working from everywhere, working from the office. So hybrid work is not just work from home or remote work. It's work wherever you want in the way you want. It's not about collaboration. You talked about Cisco Spaces, you talk about PoE, you talk about security. So you need a holistic solution. And it's not just an IT-based solution. You need human resources involved. you need IT, you need the facilities guys. So it's going to be really, really, really interesting to see. So why Cisco?
There's two reasons, right? Cisco is one of the only companies that has the extensibility of that portfolio and thinks about the entire holistic. The other thing is our partner community, Mariano. This is such an amazing opportunity for our partners to be able to stand in and create really interesting solutions that connect all of these for our customers. Cisco has an extensive partner community that is building some powerful technology around Cisco solutions. So why Cisco is because we do it all. We're thinking about it all from beginning to end. From the network, from the people, from the security standpoint, and from the collaboration standpoint.
Excellent. So thank you, Ray, for joining us today in beautiful Cancun, Mexico, and thank you guys.
Thanks for having me.